I headed a presentation here, Communicating Heritage Values, which is a very just three short words, but it was communicating the spectrum of values is the key to recognizing and addressing the spectrum of risks and vulnerabilities today. And what I'm going to talk about are three different themes of my experiences in practice. One is industrial heritage, which I've simply illustrated with a picture of city of Bath, and where there are brackets after the names with dates. These are the dates of inscription onto the World Heritage List. If there is no date, they are not inscribed. New Lanark, which is industrial heritage, all of these three are in the UK, and Melrose Station, which is not World Heritage, but is a top grade listed property in Scotland, which I undertook the restoration of and refunctioning of. So that's just a title page. Limitations, I would say, of the World Heritage Convention and the associated documents, urban heritage and industrial heritage. The categories in the World Heritage Convention of cultural heritage are monuments, groups of buildings, and sites, which frankly are not much use either for industrial heritage or for urban heritage. Because these are not sites, they are not groups of buildings, they are active places with people in, as Cornelius has correctly pointed out. The sites which World Heritage sites which I'm focusing on are for urban heritage, two cities, one in Paramaribo in Suriname in South America, one in Asmara in Africa. And the industrial heritage sites are mostly inscribed as sites rather than as groups of buildings. The operational guidelines have three, again, assessment of outstanding universal value, authenticity, integrity, and management. The three criteria are tied to the three categories. There is only very limited cross-referencing. Neither includes continuity of use. And I would, the word that was going through my mind when Cornelius was speaking was the word that I favor, which is continuity. That these are not relics from the past which need to be preserved. They are inheritance from the past which needs to be used and adapted for use. Now, urban heritage and industrial heritage both presuppose major changes of core authenticity and integrity. To me, the authenticity of urban heritage is people. It's not so much a group of buildings or any under the categories under the World Heritage Convention. It is continuous use, and it has to be adapted and retained. An article which I wrote in 2012 started off by saying that a historic city is at one and the same time a physical place and a human space. Its authenticity is a compound of man-made and associated natural elements, coupled with a complex mix of human activities. The fulsome conservation, if we use that word, of urban heritage implies continuity of authenticity and integrity as a whole. This is not recognized under the World Heritage Convention, and the classic example which I always quote is Venice, which has stopped being a city. It's a kind of Disneyland. I've been to Venice many times over many decades, The first time was in 1966. For Venice, much of the media and community focus of the heritage community of attention has been drawn to the environmental and related impacts of large cruise ships, the most visible sign of the city's transformation from an inhabited city into a mass tourist destination. Not emphasized, however, is the city's population drop from over 130,000 in the early 1970s to under 50,000 today. And these are mostly people who live in the peripheral areas of the city, not actually in the center of the city. The procedures for World Heritage inscription and monitoring neither anticipate nor include provisions to oversee major changes of functionality, and including the supplanting of the core original function of cities as places of inhabitants. With the near tourist monoculture, the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Venice could not have been more severe. It depended on visitors. Visitors could not go there. It could not function. As said in 1990, tourism is a great modern industry. We had lots of these during the Industrial Revolution, and we've been cleaning up the mess ever since. Nobody's thinking long-term of what tourism is doing to places. Industrial heritage on the World Heritage List presupposes, almost without exception, there are one or two, no industrial use, no function, relating to its original purpose. This simply creates a contrast of a city in Germany, which is not a World Heritage Site, which has a stable community, and Venice, which has a seriously unstable community, dependent on people popping in for a few days and going home again, wherever. Now, the first case example I've got here is Asmara, in the Horn of Africa, the capital city of Eritrea, which has been inscribed as a modernist African city. I was assigned in 2004, before the Historic Urban Landscape Initiative contrived by UNESCO, and my assignment provided overarching urban planning guidelines to the objective of promoting an integrated approach to sustainable protection and sustainable urban development. The factors which I embraced in this mission started from basic ones: water supply and sanitation, food supply and markets, housing supply and quality, serving the city's diverse communities and varied lifestyle of its different diverse communities, traffic and transportation, land and building uses, defining incompatible land and building uses, identifying vacant land and their suitability for development, overarching historic building conservation guidelines, and identifying the need for an integrated city-region master plan. The major drivers behind what I was working on, the assignment that I had, were to position basic human needs alongside social processes, to highlight tangible and intangible cultural heritage and their inclusive definitions, to highlight relationships with the wider natural environment, to promote an evolutionary and sociological approach to the city in its entirety as an urban ecosystem. The assignment was immediately followed by the drafting of the tentative list submission to UNESCO and informed the nomination and management plan of the inscription of Asmara, a modernist city in Africa, in 2007. Uh, Almost all of what I'm talking about here has been written about, in fact, probably all, has been written up and published and is available to anybody on academia.edu. This shows my perception, if summarized in 3 photographs, of Asmara. The urban landscape, which it was important, in my view, to maintain and which was recognized as being important to maintain by the government of Asmara and Eritrea. The modernist architecture, the 1930s Italian architecture, and people. Now, these photographs were taken in 2004. So clearly the people on the right-hand photograph will be a lot older now. But they show the continuity. Paramaribo in Suriname, at the northern part of South America. What I was concerned about, I was asked to report on the impacts of climate change on Paramaribo. I took a couple of hours looking at a vast quantity of different material that was sent to me and realized that climate change was only a part of the problem. In fact, it wasn't really a problem at all, so far as the historic inner city was concerned. It was a factor for the wider city, but it was not the factor for the World Heritage Site of the historic urban city of inner city of Paramaribo. So what I did was to change the brief in conjunction with the Inter-American Development Bank. And I sought on the specific case of Paramaribo to identify what were the main problems and risks and vulnerabilities across a range of issues: climate change, earth tremors and hurricanes, fire, which was a major problem, insects, which was also a major problem, urban infrastructures, traffic and parking, building use, ownership and occupancy, building construction and materials, building maintenance, professional and public awareness. This is looking at the wider picture, not just at what we describe as cultural heritage. It's actually looking at what the problem is with the survival, the use, the past, the present, the future of the city itself. 4 photographs this time. One is top left is the classic image of Paramaribo. Below that, showing part of the problem of infrastructure, of electricity transmission, of cables all over the place. On the right-hand side, the climate, not doing any favors to the buildings, which are almost all built of wood, and one of the many derelict buildings in Paramaribo. Industrial heritage in the United Kingdom. There were 5 initial industrial heritage sites on the World Heritage List in the United Kingdom, starting with Iron Bridge Gorge and going through Blenavon, Derwent Valley, New Lanark, and Saltaire. I was working in the period between 1999 and 2004 as the conservation officer and urban designer for the city of Derby, and I was directly involved in the inscription and management of Derwent Valley Mills. I wrote up about the 5 initial industrial heritage sites in the UNESCO magazine World Heritage Review in 2002. It's World Heritage number 28. It's available on my site on academia.edu. It's also available on the UNESCO site. The part that I was working on directly was Derwent Valley Mills in the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site. the mills themselves, and all of the supporting complex buildings, finding new uses for them when the uses which it was built for no longer existed. A mill for textiles. There have been 5 later industrial heritage sites in the United Kingdom, which I'm partly aware of. So there are 10 in all. And the third category that I'm highlighting in this presentation is the rescue, restoration and reuse of industrial heritage, with a building which was a top listed property in Scotland, which had fallen into disuse and severe dereliction. The railway station at Melrose, which one of the crazy things that happened to me in life is that somebody phoned me up and said, "Would you like to buy a derelict railway station?" It's the kind of challenge that I can't decline unless I can't possibly do it. So this one this shows the railway station in 1922 when it was in use, in 1985 when it had fallen into disrepair, severe disrepair. That's the kind of image of the inside before and afterwards. There again, basic destruction, collapse, dereliction. And this kind of portrayal, which probably doesn't show very well on screens, is an overall center illustration I did showing the building, its section, its layout, and its condition over the years. The final category that I want to talk about is that I've done a lot of writing and also speaking in different places. And there are 2 websites that anybody can look at. My main website and uploaded publications. The book which I wrote in 2007, published in 2007, was called Conservation and Sustainability in Historic Cities. Although it didn't just deal with historic cities, but that's what the title was. This deliberately showed 2 pictures of Paris on the front cover, one inside the center, one outside the center, showing the contrast of the arrangement of the city. Cities which are referred to and illustrated in publications are Cambridge, where I was educated, St. Petersburg, Sibiu in Romania, and Bath in the UK. I should say that my age is such that I was born before the World Heritage Convention was adopted, and had finished my tertiary education, my bachelor's and master's degrees, all before the World Heritage Convention was established in 1972. This is the final slide, recognizing the compendium of values of urban heritage. This again is a question of not fixing one's mind on artifacts, on monuments, groups of buildings or sites, but what is a city? What does urban heritage mean? What are the factors that go into it? The word that has been suggested to be as being more suitable than values, in fact, is factors. Putting it in rhythm with where we are today, Moving forward from the third quarter of the 20th century simplistic agenda of specialist and selective survival of heritage objects, which is where the Venice Charter fits in. Third quarter of the 20th century. Not as we are about to embark on the second quarter of the 21st century. The values or factors: community, usefulness, resource, environmental, and cultural. There are a huge number of lessons, for example, under environmental, which I've also written about with a colleague from Chile, showing how in different climatic zones, from very hot, very arid, to very cold, exemplars of sustainable passive construction that promote human conflict, resource efficiency, and ecosystem. I've seen it proposed somewhere, in many places, in fact, that India will be overwhelmed with 400, half a billion air conditioning plants put into their properties. What do you think that air conditioning does to the climate? The impact of the energy that is required to operate air conditioning. So there is a huge environmental factor related to urban heritage and cultural broadly defined. Culture is not just what is perceived as being culture. Everybody has culture, whether it be fairly basic, but it's in traditions, it's in continuity, not just in monuments and artifacts and presentations. Thank you very much. That's my presentation.